All right, we should be live now, fellas and ladies. How is it everybody doing on this lovely Wednesday morning? We got double baseball today. We got NBA playoffs tonight. We are going to dissect the day slate in a members only kind of portion, just a four gamer, and then we'll hit you guys up with regular videos throughout the day for both NBA and night baseball.
Yeah, nice little mini 4-game slate. Interesting in the sense that every game starts like an hour later.
Huh. Did not realize that. Yes, you are correct. All right. Pitching today. I guess my first thoughts when I checked out pitching today was there's definitely a variety of ways to go considering how small the slate is.
Yeah.
Like Carlos Rodon has been sensational this year. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. But I know you and I both kind of sit around and waiting for the other shoe to drop. He had a rough start the other day against, who was it? Kansas City. At least rough by the way he's been pitching all year. Still had 8 points, so it's not like he went negative, but
I was so mad I didn't use him on that game against the Yankees. Remember we talked about him and like
you had him on drafters. I remember that.
Yes, the more we talked about him, the more I liked him because the Yankees lineup, at least then and still even now, like just isn't that good, man. Rodon, this is definitely a slate. You said there's a bunch of good pitching options. For me, that's 100% true. Or you said there's a bunch of ways to go. That's true, but it's not because there's a bunch of good options. It's because there's a bunch of guys I don't really like. Rodon being the best guy in the slate, and I don't love the spot for him.
No, you got a right-handed heavy St. Louis team. It's hard to skip him because his upside is so superior to everybody else's, but I'm with you. I don't usually just play by quote-unquote feelings, but I have a bad feeling about him today.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right all the way around. It's really hard to fade him given his upside because if he has one of these good games, they're going to need him. However, he's going to be really, really low owned, or really high owned, and he's not in a consistent ace at this point. I mean, I don't know though. Like, is he? I mean, Kansas City definitely made him work, but he had been, as you've talked about, lights out every other start this year. I'm kind of interested to see how this one plays out. Not going to lie.
I'll say this: if I set one lineup, I'd put him in it. I'm too afraid of the upside, and he keeps proving people wrong. Like you said, dominated a watered-down Yankees lineup, still dominate him. And it's not like he's been going through murderer's row. Kansas City's, we'll call them average, and that might be generous. Cleveland, they're your team, but you even said they're not a great offense. And he beat up on Seattle, which we all know isn't a great team, been no-hit multiple times this year. So it's not like he's gone through Boston and the Dodgers and the Padres and stuff like that. So he has beaten up wicked, but God, has he been awesome.
You're not wrong. I'll say this, so like on kind of the other side of it, like St. Louis made Giolito work yesterday. Much worse matchup for them. I have a bad feeling about Rodon today too. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, but facts over feelings. He's been phenomenal, so I'll give the guy his credit. I think we're just both flabbergasted by. He's always had decent stuff. That's never been the concern, but this guy who's typically gotten in his own way more than anything with these big time walks, and in the past seasons when he's had these 3 and 5 walk performances, things that he's not recovered consistently. And then when he's been on, it hasn't been on like this. So I'm super nervous about it today, but I would play him in one lineup if that's all I said.
I agree with that. I also think especially, obviously in tournaments, you could play like an Arenado with Rodon.
Sure. Why not?
Small slate. I mean, even the other night, like what was it, Monday night? This is rare, but it was a much bigger slate than this 4-gamer. Montas ended up being really good. So did the top of the Seattle lineup. And that has everything to do with strikeouts. Like Montas gave up, I think, home runs to 2 or 3 of those guys, but struck out 10 or 11. So that could easily happen to Rodon.
For sure. The other reason he's kind of an easier play, despite bad feelings, is, the rest of these options are not phenomenal. You start at the bottom with Jorge Lopez. He's been better. His first couple starts of the year were pathetic, and he's definitely been better than that. I don't want to throw him, though. He's not really in my player pool. I'll give him credit for being a lot better recently, but I can't use him.
No, me neither. I do think Minnesota is going to be the chalk today. Do you agree?
I'm sure they'll be popular, depending what their lineup looks like, too. Like, I know Arias didn't make it yesterday. We brought him up. I know Cruz, we thought he'd make the lineup yesterday. He didn't. But, yeah, they're going to be relatively popular for sure.
I would think so.
You get to for a guy like John Gant. I know you're vibing on your White Sox right now, and you thought they'd get the Flaherty last night. Flaherty had his worst start of the year, at least since the first one. Gant has got solid stuff, but my lord, this guy usually has a case of the walksies. He just can't get through enough innings.
Yeah, I can't get on board with Gant.
You can't Gant?
I can't Gant. I mean, Abreu is one of my favorite bats on the slate, I think. Yeah, I can't do Gant. But I'll say this about Gant. I feel this same way about a lot of these guys. I mean, I think the guy I feel best about of all these guys is going to be Griffin Canning.
Yeah, I picked him up and I'm streaming him in year-long leagues this for today. Had a rough start last time out against Minnesota. Took 68 pitches to get through 2 innings, gave up 4 earned runs, walked a buttload of guys. In Texas, I mean, look, we've made some cases for some Texas plays, specifically Garcia and Gallo throughout the season, but we're not crazy people. We know the Texas Rangers are a bad baseball team. Griffin Canning is not a great pitcher, but he's got solid stuff. You know, we saw a monster performance against Seattle, a bunch of games in the mid-teens. He's very affordable. He's probably a guy I was going to use too.
Yeah, I mean, on the same side or on the same token of what I said with Rodon, I can definitely get on board with Canning and Adolis Garcia. Another homer last night. I mean, yeah. Or Gallo, who was out of the lineup last night for sure. I will say the other guy, and I was not on him, and this is another guy I'm worried that the other shoe's going to drop soon. Yes, Caprillion. He escaped some jams against Boston, but you were right. Like, maybe that was a good thing. I remember we talked about that, and I said, I was scared about that because he escaped, and I was worried he was going to get blown up, and you kind of flipped it on me and said, well, maybe that was a good thing, and it was a good thing. He ended up pitching really well in that Angels start. Clearly they're letting him throw a lot of pitches. This is a classic day slate, so I don't feel good about it. I think he's right up there with Canning and Rodon as, the most viable guys on the slate personally.
Even though I have literally no statistics to back it up, I always feel good about playing Oakland players at home in the daytime. I had a lot of luck with them in GPPs in years prior. That means literally nothing for Caprillion today, but it feels good. It gives me the warm and fuzzies in the inside, even though there's absolutely nothing to back it up that actually makes any sense today.
For sure. Seattle's actually swinging a decent bat, though. I don't know, man. This slate is ugly. That's just what it is.
Well, I think the problem with Caprillion, for me, and probably for the majority of people watching this, I don't know a ton about him. I know you're born into the team's farm systems and what to expect out of him. I don't know a lot about this guy. I know he's 27 years old because it says it right here. I know he's a little pricey for a guy, making his 3rd start of the season. But, Seattle's not a great baseball team. They're decent right now. They got a couple of bats we don't mind. But he's the guy I'm looking at. I would play him over Gant.
Same. I mean, I think he's right there with Canning, Rodon, and then – what about Pineda?
I was going to say, what about your boy Dane Dunning?
Yeah, I don't hate Dunning either. I mean, he was really good last time out. The Yankees, man, even bats carved them up last night. They seem to really only be able to hit the shitty Baltimore pitching.
Well, no Stanton. Voigt's still not vibing. DJ LeMahieu's having his worst season maybe of his career. They're not that good right now. I know they have a lot of big names, and we know that they're the Yankees, but there's nothing about this season that should really tell us that they're the Yankees.
No, especially, and I was saying this a couple weeks ago, the bottom of their lineup is so bad right now. It's atrocious.
I mean, Torres is finally hitting, but I think you have 3 combined home runs out of Voit and LeMahieu. We're now almost a third of the way through the season. Stanton's not out there. Gary Sanchez is wildly unpredictable at best.
You know who else is awful? Brett Gardner.
Yeah, he's seen better years for sure. Hicks is now on the IL for a long time. I mean, it's just not that good of a team. I know I keep thinking about the Yankees, but there's nothing about what they're throwing out there right now that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's pitched a really good game against them. So, yeah, just interesting. I mean, I'm looking at Dunning here, and I actually think this is maybe a slightly worse spot than he was just in. That said, it's not a bad spot. I mean, Dunning's definitely in play. You're not wrong.
The hardest part about Dunning is he's just not a big pitch count guy. I know he threw 89 against Seattle, but he's usually down in the 70s. It's hard to get really good upside from him now. He's a solid strikeout guy. The Angels lineup clearly isn't going to be the same without Mike Trout. This is something like if Ohtani didn't make the lineup today, I'd get more excited.
100% agreed.
Because they're kind of like you said with the Yankees. The bottom half of their lineup is terrible.
For sure.
Terrible, if you want to call it that even. So I think gun to head right now, I'd go Rodon and Canning. I'm not going to feel great about it, but I don't think anybody feels great about their pitching options today when they hit submit.
I agree with that. I do think that's a big reason why it's going to be huge chalk.
Yeah, and I think with Rodon, like he can regress a lot and still be a top 2 or 3 pitcher today.
For sure, no doubt about that.
So I don't know. Right? I mean, he's been so good. It's just when you see a guy, and we've seen Rodon for years with like nice starts.
I've always been a fan of Rodon, and I've always been a fan of his stuff. And apparently, they signed. It's funny. This is random, but I'll go on a little tangent. Jack Flaherty, Lucas Giolito, and Max Fried all pitched in high school together, and the White Sox signed that school's pitching coach as their new pitching coach coming into the year. And apparently, the word is that he's done wonders with Rodon. So I'm not necessarily sure this is all that surprising either.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it's clearly working, right?
I think with that stuff, there's a lot of noise with that because we don't really know what the impact is. But again, with anything else, he's pitching really well. We've always been a fan of his stuff. So maybe there is something to that. I also think the price isn't an issue on this slate because it's just not an issue. Go ahead.
I was going to say maybe there is though. We saw for years people leave the Pirates and all of a sudden become good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still happening. You still see these teams like the Orioles we talked about yesterday. Kevin Gausman, he was with Baltimore for years, was, kind of just mediocre. Now, he's moved on and is pitching the best ball of his life. So, yeah, maybe there is something to it.
So, all right. As far as offense goes on this slate, the more I think about it just over the last, 2 minutes, you're right. Minnesota's going to be wildly popular today. Against Lopez. And Lopez, as much as I won't use him today, he is better than his first few starts of the year. That doesn't take much, and that isn't saying much. But this is a guy who's, he's been all right lately. He's not great. He walks too many guys. He's kept the ball in the ballpark recently.
I just don't think Minnesota is good enough to be chalk. Last night, that was the big reason I didn't like them because they're not that good right now. They got some pieces that are good, but I don't know. I would not personally in tournaments. I'd be looking away from Minnesota in tournaments. Although every team's in play, one-offs. They're all in play here.
I think Oakland's then probably the secondary most popular team.
I was going to say Oakland or the White Sox. People like the White Sox, so it's the only reason I say them.
Yeah, it's hard to want to pick on Gant's not a guy I like throwing, but he's also a guy he just doesn't give up home runs. He doesn't give up a ton of contact. I mean, he's fine around the zone. His stuff isn't terrible. I think he's only given up 2 home runs all year. 1 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the White Sox are popular.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Our options today, from both an offense and a pitching perspective, they're not sexy.
No, they're not. So, again, I don't love the White Sox stack, but I do like Abreu, who looks locked in. He's just good. I mean, we know who Abreu is.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'll tell you who was massive for me last night. Jared Walsh at under % owned, dude.
You called this one out when we talked about the Angels stack on this one. That come in homer off the bullpen when we talked about doubling up on Walsh and Ohtani yesterday to be contrarian GPP stacks, and they both went yard. Unfortunately, Rendon didn't do a damn thing.
No, he did not. But funny thing, both Walsh and Ohtani homered off the lefty, and Rendon had 3 real hard outs.
Okay. Side note on Jared Walsh, maybe the other people that aren't noticing this, but since about 20 games to go in the season last year, he's as good as almost anybody in baseball.
Man, you called this out a couple weeks ago. It's funny. Last night I made my lineups, and then I was going over them, and I realized I didn't have Walsh in any of my lineups. The Angels were my top stack, so I needed each guy in my lineup. So ended up having to take Vlad out of the line, and it was Vlad and Andrew Vaughn, and the swap was for Walsh and Upton. So Vlad, went. He was really good. I was like, damn, that was a bad move. One of those, it's rare it happens where you end up on the better side after Vlad goes yard, but that felt good.
Yeah, because Walsh was better than Vlad. Vlad, I know he had the homer, but so did Walsh, and Walsh also had the 3 RBIs and another hit. So, um,
Real good though, because Upton was the outfield GPP hard recommend. So him homering in his first at bat, man, that one felt good.
yeah, I know Otani doesn't show his points here,
It
but
doesn't. It's they don't show his points. Do you think that we've talked about this? It definitely cuts his ownership a little bit. It has to.
it could. I mean, because you just don't see what he's done recently, and you can look here and you can do the addition, and anybody with, you know, a grade school education can count up the 22 points or whatever it might be, but it's kind of annoying. People don't want to have to do that.
Also, you see him averaging 2.6 DK points. Like, even I, who love Otani, I think about it, I see that. I'm like, damn, I don't really know how many points he's averaging. Like, and it goes in my head. And I'm one of the biggest Otani fans.
So the other thing, going back to the Twins, which is going to make them even more popular, it's the first game, which means their lineup is going to be out early, which is only going to, hell, it could be coming out as soon as a half hour from now.
It'll be coming out soon, probably. We did get on early today, but yeah, you're not wrong there at all.
So that's going to increase their popularity. They'll get even more popular if Cruz makes the lineup. They're very, very affordable. Kepler, Kirilloff, Reyes, all, 4,300 and less. Cruz is expensive, so what? So is Polanco, who came off of a brief stint of not playing a lot and, homered yesterday.
Yeah. A guy that I shit on a lot that I took this, it's not good. Rob Refsnyder. He is hot right now, and he's really cheap. If he makes the lineup, I think you can go there as a punt.
I'm going to say that you're half right there. He's not good, but I've actually never heard you shit on him. So I don't know if you're really that mean to Rob Refsnyder. I don't think I've ever heard you say a bad thing about him.
Maybe just in my head. That's all it is.
Because you're not wrong. He's not good, but, not good players can have their moment in the sun, and apparently that's for him this week.
This is baseball. I think he was the leading hitter on the slate yesterday.
So I was thinking about, we talk about it, well, that's just the way baseball is last night when I was watching a bunch of the Brewers-Padres game. I swear, and again, I'm probably way off right here, so this is just, don't really quote me on this one, but I swear the Brewers hit the ball hard and make outs and hit the ball weak and get lucky hits. Almost, outside of home runs, almost religiously. I'd almost rather have them bloop it. It seems to result in a hit more often than hard hit balls actually do. And the side note, because I haven't complained about it in days, the umpire last night, both sides, so it was even, missed at least 30 calls in the game. And that's because, are you trying to tell me that an old man can eyeball that Joe Musgrove slider and decide if it's a strike or not? Good luck with that.
Well, it'll become a game, because an ump misses a call. Now he has to have the makeup call. If he doesn't do you know what I'm saying? It's like a game. It's so stupid. Speaking of the Brewers' actual game, though, I was thinking about you. I was wondering if you watched the game because, man, Padres, I haven't seen a team steal that many bases in a while.
That was a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Now, you don't get a lot of base runners against Corbin Burns, but it's very Noah Syndergaard in his prime, whereas he doesn't give up a lot of base runners, but if you get on, you're running because that high leg kick, I'm pretty fast for a 40-year-old white guy, but not fast by MLB standards. I feel like I could steal bases on it because it is awful.
Okay, I'm glad I brought that up also then because, even Eric Hosmer stole a bag.
They did the double steal, which one of the reasons he gave up runs last night is they had 2 outs, guys on first and third. Caratini was on third, and I can't remember who was on first. Was it? It could have been. Goes to steal second. Remember. He goes to steal second, and they throw through the second, and Caratini steals home on it. Then with an overthrow, they get the guy over to the third, and that was a big part. I think Burns only gave up 2 hits, but gave up 4 runs.
I saw that he had given up 2 runs with only 1 hit. I watched a little bit. He seemed, when I was watching at least, again, I was kind of just watching. I watched maybe 2 innings in total. He seemed to have a ton of trouble locating. He was getting his strikeouts when he could locate, but there was a point where he walked 3 guys in a row, I think.
He hit a couple walks. He hit somebody. He did not have his best stuff. And credit to the Padres. I think they put together a good game plan, and they were very patient at the plate, which they do. They're a good baseball team that takes a lot of pitches. And yes, if Burns is on, like Woodruff the night before was on, you can still cut them up, but he wasn't. He didn't have his best stuff, and the Padres did a good job. It was a perfect storm of both of them.
That's what we talk about, though, with matchups. I'm glad you just made that point. Like, these elite pitchers, if they're on, it doesn't matter what matchup they're in. On the flip side, though, like, part of the reason you want them in a better matchup is because if they're not on, if they don't have their ace stuff, like, weak matchups, like, sometimes won't exploit that. Teams like the Padres will.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so again, I think in cash games, the Twins make a buttload of sense. They're going to be popular. Lopez has been better, but he's still not good. He's, very arguably the weakest one on the slate. Any desire to get any Baltimore bats in there? Kind of hard to know what their lineup is. I know Santander wasn't great last night, but I have no issues going back here if you want to one-off him against Pineda. He's dirt cheap and has a lot of power.
I think him or Stewart, two guys that I could one-off. Stewart hot right now also. Hot, relatively speaking, but homers in back-to-back games is it's something more than nothing.
That being said, I respect Pineda, so I'm not like trying to go in on him big, but a one-off or two is all right.
Yep.
All right, so you mentioned, for me personally, Rodon's going to be so popular that St. Louis gets no love. I get the Arenado one-off, but outside of that, I'm not really trying to get too high on St. Louis.
One other guy I like is Dylan Carlson. He hit the ball hard 3 times a couple nights ago. Eaton robbed him last night. He singled in his last at bat. I'm calling yard from Carlson today.
All right. He's also very, very cheap. Arenado's a different story at 5,700. Great player. Really good against lefties, but that's a big way to prioritize salary today.
It sure is. I mean, this is something like if you roster St. Louis today, know that if they go off, you're going to be in a real good spot. But the likely outcome is that they do nothing and you're going to be finishing towards at the bottom of your tournaments. Just know that.
Yeah, so you mentioned Abreu. I think ultimately I don't really love the White Sox today. They're, at least they have good offensive players in a few spots, which is, different than some of these other teams, but
I don't think there's going to be much you love on this slate.
No, there's not. You're not wrong about that. All right, next up, Seattle against Oakland. I think for me, like, Oakland's a team they're expensive too, so they are going to be a little harder to get to because of their price tag. I mean, Kanya's 5,500, Laureano's 6,200, Chapman's 5. I'm assuming Olsen's in the mid 5s. Nope, just 5K. So you're going to have to make adjustments to your team if you want to use them.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, they don't stand out to me as far as I need them, but I like Oakland. They're in play. I'm not a Flexen fan. I like the fact that, like you said, the guys are expensive. They'll be lower owned. They do have some cheap guys also, though, probably. Interested to see what their lineup looks like today as well. Yeah,
for sure. So just based on pricing, I think your average DFS player looks at this. They're going to see the Minnesota prices and the Oakland prices. And that's a big reason that Minnesota gets more love is they're significantly more affordable, especially if Cruz doesn't make the lineup.
I agree with that.
So that makes me a little bit more interested in Oakland. I'll go back to a point that I made that really has nothing to do with today, but I've had a lot of success using Oakland at home during the day. So, again, doesn't really actually mean anything, but it gives me the warm and fuzzies. Plus, they are going to be lower owned. The pricing will make a difference to the ownership.
Yeah, it will. And also the fact that their lineup probably won't come out till late.
Well, that can't hurt either. So I think for me, if I set one lineup today, it would be pretty hard on Oakland. And I know Flexen's had some decent moments this year. He got blown up last time out. Was terrible a couple starts ago against Texas. Only gave up 4 runs, but 10 hits. I like a guy like this. 25 hits allowed recently. So it's not just walking guys and getting pulled early. Legit, they're hitting the ball all over the yard.
For sure. I get that. Oakland's definitely in play. I also think some Seattle's in play.
Agreed. I think how good Caprillion has been will definitely cut into Seattle's ownership. So I think that's another interesting way to go. I could do a shootout in this game. Not a shootout, but a high-scoring game here.
Yeah. Especially because, we talk about, man, what do you have to beat? If this game, you don't need, a 12 or 13 game. If this game's 6-7 and the other game's all bust a little bit, you're in a good spot.
Agreed. Even if you just one off a Kyle Lewis, who's really, really cheap, he's a guy with some power in his bat.
Their outfield is all in play for me. Haniger, Lewis, and Kelenic.
Yeah. Haneker's just good. He hits the ball all over the yard, a lot of power, 13 bombs this year.
And Kelenic with 26 DK points over his past 2 games. Like, he's starting to see the ball better. I got no issues with any of these guys.
I gotcha. All right, last game up, Texas against LA. I'm big on Trout. Nope, just kidding. Dunning against Canning. Again, more about the pitching today. But you could always talk me into the Ohtani-Walsh combination. And then Garcia is a guy from Texas that you'd kind of mentioned. Even if you play Griffin Canning, this Garcia kid is legit. 15 bombs this year, at least a half dozen stolen bases to go along with it. Just a ton of double-digit games.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no reason he should be under 4K still either. Like,
yeah,
there's just no reason. It's baseball, so like these guys aren't locks like they would be in NBA, but his performance has, consistently outproduced his price tag. The other
highest, I was just going to say, I think he's the highest scoring guy per start on the slate, with the exception of Buxton, who's on the IL. And this is a guy averaging over a full point better than Arenado, better than Abreu, better than Mancini. Like, we are now almost a third of the way into the season. Like, adjust his pricing to where it belongs. He should not be down here.
No, exactly. I mean, he just shouldn't. The other angel I wanted to call it was Justin Upton. Again, he used him last night, obviously on my good side. Different spot for him because he was facing a soft lefty last night, like a dream spot for him. But when he's seeing the ball well, I'm interested.
Yeah, it's a side note for guys. He's really good against soft tossing lefties.
Guys that can't, because he's really good against lefties in general, and he strikes out a ton. So guys that can't really strike guys out, that's really where you want to use Upton for sure.
Now, he's also an extremely volatile and streaky guy who has 4 hits over the past 2 games. So that's a reason to be encouraged. Doesn't matter who he's facing. Well, if he's facing Jacob deGrom, no, you're not going to be excited. But it doesn't really matter who he's facing when he gets hot. He still prefers soft-tossing lefty, but he can still go yard on anyone.
There's no one on the Rangers staff or in their bullpen that I'm scared to use Upton against when he's hot. He's no lock or anything like that. But I will say, be watch for Oakland cheap guys like Seth Brown. They've got another guy like Berea, who they just called up. Brown had a hot stretch recently. Yeah, go ahead.
I said quietly having a nice season. 8 home runs.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the average, 221. Average is down like all over because baseball, it's become a new game, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering when it's going to go back because there's going to be adjustments remade to baseball. I've been saying this for years. If you could just learn to bunt. For some of these guys who get the massive shift, bunt it down the opposite. Just take a free single. It would not be that hard of a skill to develop. I know it's not sexy. It reminds me of when, who's the old school basketball? Rick Barry said he could teach Shaq to shoot 80% from free throw line if he would shoot underhand. But like any basketball player would be afraid of their image. Like big sluggers would be afraid of bunting and taking a free single. But you want to bet 500 or get rid of the shift, just bunt it down the opposite field.
Yeah, I have no arguments with that. One more guy I want to call out because kind of like, can't remember who we were talking about yesterday. That's having like, maybe, when you said something about Castellanos and Winker. Another guy kind of like that is Mark Hanna. I mean, continues just to have a really good year. Averaging the same amount of DK points as Laureano. And that's impressive because Laureano would steal his bags. So Hanna doesn't. I mean, he's doing it all from the bat. Weird that he only has 15 RBIs.
Yeah, well, he's batting up in leadoff all the time, right?
True.
So, this is a guy with 8+ DK points in 8 of 10 games. This has started before this year, too. He just used to be a platoon guy against lefties. This guy can hit.
Yeah, he's good. Like, he's a good hitter. You're so right about that. He's an underrated, just pure hitter.
So, it's tough to make a full stack of Oakland today if you want to use their good players. Matt Olson, Mark Hanna, Laureano. But you do throw in, you got Jed Lowry, who's on the cheap. You're probably not going to be able to also get a Matt Chapman or whoever it is, but you're going to get Pinder potentially, who's really affordable. Piscotti, Seth Brown, Berea, as you mentioned, Barrera.
Yeah,
there's a variety of cheaper guys.
Yeah, he was good in the minors too. I mean, I wouldn't take much in that 0.8. He hasn't played much at all.
Yeah, he's got 5 at bats. So,
and he actually got a hit in his last at bat. So,
promising prospects, blistering hot start with the Aviators helped spur the promotion. So, like, he was hitting the ball.
Yeah, I mean, they got an outfield. I don't think they're calling him up like unless they want to give him some at bats. I mean, they've got good outfielders.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think Oakland's my stack of the day. I mean, they won't be unowned because there's not a lot of great places to go. I just think they'll be a fraction. The Twins, to me, will be overwhelming.
I think they'll be lower than the White Sox also, actually. I mean, especially because the lineups, like, yeah, I get that call for sure. I mean, like you said, Flexen's been giving up a ton of hits also.
Yeah, hits are the best way to get like big runs, right? Like getting hit by a pitch is great, but you still only get 2 points. A double gets you 5, gets you an opportunity in an RBI and stuff like that. So a guy who gave up 25 hits in his last 3 starts, like he's not missing bats.
Not even a little bit.
And I know you're not a Flexen fan, so you wouldn't mind if the Oakland A's were flexing on Flexen today.
No, I wouldn't.
So, all right, that about does it for the day. We want to wish everybody best of luck. Got any last minute little tidbits?
No, that's all I got. But just remember, and something that I try to preach what I praise what I preach, that there's a lot of slates going on right now. You don't have to play all of them. You know, you can take some off. Actually, really thinking about taking this day slate off. So, yeah, that's just my piece of advice. I don't need to hear anything.
Do it. He's not going to do it. Maybe you could just set one lineup.
I wasn't even going to say anything because I knew this was going to happen, but you asked me. I had to throw it out there.
I know it's a lot harder for you to skip a baseball slate than it is other sports.
It is, but when there's another one tonight, like a better one tonight, it's easier. Like I like day slates, but I really don't like these slates that the games start like an hour apart. It's just really annoying. I hate that.
I gotcha. That makes sense to me. So, all right, guys. Good luck today, and we'll see you a little bit later for basketball and night baseball.
Thanks, guys.